Today we are talking about the top 5 supports for Worlds. Now originally I was basing this on the data from the fall split and I was looking at the recent games that had been played, but luckily while I was working on this video, Blues Ultra already released the stats for the pre-Worlds games, or rather the SMITE World Championship placement round, so we have a very up-to-date data information on all the gods that have been played, that have been picked, and how they've been performing on the highest levels of play by all the teams that are competing right now to get to the SMITE World Championship. We have seen some very interesting developments when it comes to the support role at the moment, so let's talk about them. First of all, what we need to be aware of here is that many of the support gods are currently played in solo as well. I already talked about this in my top 5 solo video, but I will mention it here again. Many of these gods have very high pick and ban rates because they can be played both in solo and support and sometimes in jungle as well. So depending on where you're planning to play them, they may have a little bit more or a little bit less value. Though I am quite confident that the gods that I chose here are the ones that would primarily fit into the support role, even though they're not always played there. Things are slightly different between support and solo though. There are quite a few gods that can be picked in solo, like for example Chang'e, and have been played there to decent success, at least a few times, that don't really have the same pick rate in support, or would probably not have the same success either. In support, on the other hand, there are not many gods that wouldn't be picked in solo as well. So the variety overall in solo is a bit larger because you just have a few gods added to the pool, whereas in support you basically mostly rely on the gods that can also be played in solo. Let's first talk about some honorable mentions that are lacking in some department to make it in the top 5 or just aren't established enough yet for a top 5 slot. The first one here is Kuzenbo. Kuzenbo is definitely an interesting pick that has been played more and more and is definitely a strong support pick right now as well in certain matchups, and that shouldn't be underestimated, especially if you're going against the Mercury. Having a Kuzenbo in any role is very, very helpful. The problem with Kuzenbo so far is that his stats don't necessarily always show that. His pick and ban rate isn't absolutely insane just yet. It's 33%, which is still good, but it's not over the top. And his win rate is 50%. He wins half of his games, and with 10 games played, that is definitely a solid performance. It's just not quite as much as the gods in the top 5 are able to show. Another honorable mention goes to Gap. While he's not been picked much, he is not completely ignored when it comes to bans. With 11 bans so far, he is a god that is on people's radar at least. He's often banned to avoid having him as a counter pick. He is simply someone who can help certain team comps very well, especially through his shield, but also through his setup. And as such, some people just don't want to have him around. A god that has dropped off quite drastically is Fenrir. He just didn't bring the performance in the previous split to keep his current value and hasn't been picked or banned all too much with 3 picks and only 2 bans, and not a single win as well. Then, as we're getting closer to the top 5, we also have Erlang Shen. Now, Erlang Shen actually has a 100% pick and ban rate so far and a 55% win rate. So stat-wise, just completely in his own ballpark. The problem is, Erlang Shen is just extremely hard to place in which role he's being played in. He has been played in support, but his stronger role is still a jungle, and I think he's even seen some play in solo. So really, he's not a support in that sense, even though he's very present, and if you get him, you might as well consider putting him in support as well, if it works with your strategy. This high aggression theme is also continued with the next god, and that is the literal next god, Fenrir. Fenrir has been played in support a decent amount. He is still being played in solo a lot, so I don't really want to put him in the same place as the other gods here that are primarily performing in support, but Fenrir has been showing up a lot. He brings a 52% pick and ban rate and a 70% win rate to the table, so he's a pick that shouldn't be underestimated. I'm going to address Fenrir's rise specifically in a future video. I actually want to talk to some pros about this, and as such, we will not talk about this in detail just yet, but he is definitely a god to keep an eye on, even though he is not exclusively a support. And that brings us to the top 5. And number 5 here is a god that can be played in other roles as well, but so far I get the impression that he is doing best in support, and that will probably be the niche where we'll most likely see him more, and that is Odin. Now Odin has been a prominent flex god for a long time now, and that is because he is simply so potent against certain picks that are strong in the meta. He counters out a lot of the other solo laners as well as supports as well as junglers, because we have many gods at the moment that are strong in the meta that don't have leaps or other tools to get out of the cage from the ultimate, and that really pushes Odin up. 87.72% pick and ban rate place him right behind Erlang in that regard, but with a more heavy lean towards support. And a 50% win rate also indicates that when he gets through, he's not always doing well, but generally performs decently. Just depends on the matchup and who gets him as well. The next one is probably my favorite rising god on this list, and that is Cerberus. Cerberus does not come with an extremely high pick and ban rate, but he is now leaning more and more towards support. And with a 32% ban rate, he's also not completely out of the picture, kind of around the same area as Kuzenbo. But different from Kuzenbo, Cerberus at the moment stands at a 69% win rate. The only one that can compete with this on this list is Fenrir right now. And that is something that should not be underestimated, especially because this is a heavy rise from his performance in the previous split. In that split, he was already valued, but he only had a 44% win rate, which doesn't even come close to what he has now. There are multiple reasons why Cerberus performs so well. On one hand, pressure gods in duo lane are working better and better again, as we already see from the other picks as well, and Cerberus happens to be an extremely high pressure god that is also able to even kill ADCs on his own in certain situations, which is something rather unique for most guardians. And at the same time, he also brings a lot of teamfight potential. His ultimate is basically a free beat stack similar to Ares, and as such, that is something that will always be valued as long as games don't end too early, which they don't at the moment. Additionally, Cerberus' ult also allows him to punish pretty heavily in sieges, in Phoenix sieges especially. Much like the rest of the list, the next one here is also a multi-roller that's leaning more towards support at the moment, and that is Artio. Artio has a 61.4% pick and ban rate, and also a 45% win rate along with that. Obviously not the highest win rate here, and we will see the same picture continuing with the other very highly rated gods here. And that's just due to the fact that these gods are so highly contested that often better teams will not even get them, and the only time they will give them to weaker teams is when they expect to be able to counter them, as such dropping the win rate below what it should actually be if they were played by evenly strong teams. Artio has been drifting away from her typical blink stun playstyle more and more. We still see it, but we also see a lot of pickups of Horrific Emblem and of Heavenly Wings Sprint, so that she can just have a lot of control across a team fight. Sustain guards are generally experiencing a little bit of a renaissance, so that helps her too. But at the same time, her cripple is just an extremely good tool against many high tier guards at the moment. Many high pressure junglers, for example, rely on their mobility to really get their damage off. And with Artio being able to counter that, she has some pretty good matchups, and that's why she is picked so frequently, along with the fact that she's just a strong performer that you can't go too wrong with because she's very safe at the same time. Her lane pressure is also not to be underrated, so it all goes hand in hand for her. Spot number 2 goes to a familiar face here, and that is Athena. Athena used to be the most valued god in the game basically in the last split. Now she's dropped off a tiny bit, but she's still very much up there. She's got a 72% pick and ban rate, so she is in many games, and she's also banned quite frequently. She doesn't get quite as many wins anymore though, with a 33% win rate, so towards the lower end here. But again, like with many other highly valued picks, those often just go to the weaker teams because no one will not ban them against a better team. We've talked about Athena a few times, not much to say here. It's her ultimate that gives her so much control across the entire map, and the fact that her taunt is just an extremely strong CC tool. Plus, she also has decent damage and clear herself, so everything works out for her. And that brings us to the number 1 right away, and that is Terra. With an 85.96 pick and ban rate, she is almost as high up here as Erlang, but she is much more valued as a support and also still as a solo laner. She has a 42% win rate and a total of 31 picks. The big strength of Terra, once again a reoccurring pattern here. She can build a lot of pressure in the duo lane. She also has some sustain for her teammates, and she also has the potential to turn teamfights around just through her ultimate because it's such a strong tool. And that's also a deterrent in Phoenix Sieges for the enemy, as well as helping their own team with Phoenix Sieges. So very, very strong tools for any situation in the game, really. When it comes to support builds though, we're probably in the most boring meta in a long time now. You're gonna start with Guardian's Blessing, you're gonna get Reinforced Greaves or Reinforced Shoes, and depending on what matchup you're in, you're either going to get Sovereignty first or only Hunter's Scarp. In some situations, you can consider Hardwood Amulet as well if you need some more magical defense for your ally. Then you will typically go into Spirit Robe, and then you fill up the rest with whatever necessary counter items you have. Could also be a Mantle of Discord if you have nothing specific. Could be a Winged Blade, Midgardian Mail, Magi's Blessing, really whatever. And in the case of guards with a lot of healing, with frequent healing, you can throw in a Lotus Crown, usually in place of Sovereignty or in addition to it. And that's really all there is to support builds, and these don't vary much between picks. You'll occasionally also see a Stone of Binding early in the game, for example on Artio, but that's just the icing on the cake basically. Other than that, it all just remains the same for everyone, and you have to adapt a little bit to the situation towards the end of the build. And that's it for the top 5 supports as well as their builds. And I hope this was interesting and insightful. I will talk a little bit more about some other gods in a future video, I think. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button with the bell. It really helps me out. Blue's information will be linked down below if you want to check it out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.